Yeah, a question that keeps coming to us right now from credit union boards, from bank executives, is how can my institution utilize artificial intelligence? What can I do? So to answer that question, I'm first going to start with what is artificial intelligence? And at Cornerstone Advisors, we break AI into three different areas. We break it into first machine learning, and some examples of machine learning are supervised machine learning and unsupervised machine learning. An example of supervised machine learning is where you point a bunch of models, which are just fancy ways of saying things that help me to determine if somebody is a likely candidate for something. You point your model at your old loan data, for example, and you determine which loans you would have approved had they not met your credit score criteria. Almost every bank in the country, every credit union in the country uses credit score as its primary factor in consumer lending, for example. And we set a credit score cutoff of like 680 or 690 or 700, and if we exceed that, then we can do some auto approvals. Well, what's happening in the machine learning models is that people are saying, look, I think that there's a lot of millennials and Gen Zers I want to lend to, but did you know the average millennial has a credit score of 683 and a Gen Zer even lower? So they wouldn't make our cut if we used just a 680 cutoff or 690 cutoff. So with that, we think maybe we can use artificial intelligence and machine learning, supervised machine learning, to look at those folks and look at their utilities, their telecom, their rent payments, and say, gosh, these people have good debt to income ratios. They make their payments on time. They're a good candidate for a loan, and we can expand our consumer loan pool. So that is what supervised machine learning, that's a practical application we're seeing. We're seeing tons of credit unions right now move towards a Synaptic or a Zest or a Provenir or any of these solutions out there that are promising supervised machine learning in a decision engine. Then there's unsupervised machine learning, and a lot of our credit unions and banks are already doing this and they don't even know it. They're using a fraud tool from Actimize or Verafin or Abrigo, and that fraud tool is going through and looking for money transactions that don't make any sense, anomalous transactions, and that's what unsupervised machine learning is really good at. What's weird and what happens? Now, the big thing about machine learning, and I want to back up one level, that is a concern for bankers, is a valid concern, is what does it mean that something scored a certain way? Because machine learning has no conscience. It doesn't care, and it will incorporate biases. Like it could determine that maybe a minority-owned business is not a good candidate because of other biases. That's horrible for fair lending regulation. So we have to have supervised machine learning where we have regulations like fair lending, Community Investment Act, things like that, that we can oversee and determine that it's doing the right thing by the regulations. And we have to have some transparency in the unsupervised machine learning as to how it's arriving at that anomalous transaction. You can't just tell a regulator, I looked at it because the machine told me to look at it. I looked at it because it was 2.5 standard deviations away from the norm for this account. So that kind of stuff, you need to incorporate bias management as well as incorporate transparency in machine learning. Now let's talk for a second about the second kind of machine learning. That's called robotic process automation. Lots of our banks and credit unions are already doing this. This is where you use a tool to go ahead and automate a process that a human would traditionally do over and over and over. Let me take the example of money laundering alerts. One of the things that happens when a suspect gets popped up in an alert is that BSA analyst will go out and Google that individual. And maybe they use a negative media engine like LexisNexis or Nomino Data, and then they go and do a curated research where they look for dirty words like indicted, convicted, accused, and action words like money laundering, terrorist financing, embezzlement, all that kind of stuff. And they try to filter out that person and create a little dossier on them. Well, why can't the machine just do that? If John Meyer comes up as your hit, why isn't the machine going out and pulling all that dossier so that when I go to review that alert, John Meyer's background, his LinkedIn profile, his Facebook profile. All of that is already looked through and gathered and collated for that BSA analyst. That's an example of robotic process automation. We see a lot of our clients doing that. The third kind of machine learning is the exciting stuff that everybody's talking about, which is generative AI. This whole ChatGPT phenomenon. How does that work? Well, it goes out and it collates based on a whole bunch of information, and it enables you to automate messaging. So the best use case that we're seeing for generative AI right now is, let's say I am getting into small business banking, and I'm thinking that I need to reach out to those small business owners in my area. There's actually a ChatGPT plugin that I can go and scrape LinkedIn profiles of those small business owners. I can create a LinkedIn connection message with a coffee chat question through ChatGPT. So if I'm a relationship manager trying to source new business, maybe I use that function to go reach out and connect with 15, 20, 30 small business owners and tailor a message specifically to them. So hopefully you've learned a little bit about artificial intelligence in the machine learning side, in the robotic process automation side, and in the generative AI side, and some practical use cases for your institution.